Hello, everybody.
It's your favorite coaches.
It's Howard.
And LaRonda Johnson.
It's his.
Plus hers equals ours.
Welcome back to another episode of His Plus Hers Equals Ours. Today, we're going to be talking about bonds and boundaries.
Bonds and boundaries within a relationship and like your relationship, with your spouse or your significant other, but also with your children as parents.
That's a tough subject right there.
Well, it can be tough. You just got to know how to, do parenting and have it with boundaries, but still have that bond. I still love you, but I still need to correct you.
So let me ask you a question. Where do bonds start?
The bond starts in the womb. So that's with children. So it starts within the womb. You got the mama that's pregnant, you rubbing on the belly, you're connected. So it all starts right there. And even with the spouse or the significant other, even though they may not be able to experience carrying the child, but they experience like seeing the wife like develop, her stomach getting bigger, be able to feel the kicks of the baby.
I think I speak for all men when I say that we're good on the carrying part.
Okay.
But I did enjoy very much rubbing on your stomach when you were pregnant and talking to the baby because they kick your hand like, that's my daddy right there. I like that.
And they recognize the voices. So even if like when we was pregnant with the baby boy, like he somehow like recognized like the children, like his older siblings, they was always around and either rubbing on my stomach or talking to him. So, and that's even scientific proof that babies do recognize different voices. And so it all starts right there. So never feel like as a gentleman, as the male, that you can't have a bond with your child while the child is in the womb, because you can. It just starts with the, touching of the belly and talking to the baby so they can recognize your voice. And when they come out, and you've seen it, and that's happened to our kids, like just the coming out and you see the baby like turn his head. Not so much. Some people like, oh, that's because they can hear, but sometimes it's been proven that it's because they recognize the voices. So it's always important to start right there in the womb.
And you'll get a different reaction. Like I noticed a different reaction from when I was rubbing on her stomach and just I would be talking to him in her belly, and I would get a lot of kicks and flips and then you'll see the knee go like that to the stomach. It's like, ugh. But it's also awesome because they're reacting to your voice or to the vibration of your voice. So and my voice tends to carry, so it's like there's a lot of reverberating coming from my voice.
Like a
Why has it got to be a
the bass?
But and what happened is that when our son was born, we had a bond already, and it also helped that I allowed her to get rest and stuff when I could, to get up in the middle of the night, take care of him, walk the floor with him, change his diaper, put him back to sleep. Like he would fall asleep. Like we have pictures of him falling asleep on my chest while I'm laying on the couch. Like we're both knocked out. Even
with the oldest one. So I would say like between the baby and the oldest child, they are more of like daddies. And then we got the two middle ones are more like, I want mommy type. And it's okay because we don't do that like choose which parent. Like
there's no favoritism in this house.
Yeah.
Except for the kids. The kids pick and choose who they like more.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, because they would go like, oh, I can go to daddy for this, I can go to mom for that. But then sometimes we got to be on the same page. Just like sometimes I got to call babe. Like, did she already ask or did he already ask you for that? And then be like, nah, that's the first time. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just making sure. So when I give my answer, it's cool.
Because kids be trying to coordinate attacks against parents sometimes. And they be trying to get stuff over on the other parent while that parent gone and get the other parent to be like, hey, is it okay if oh, sure, go ahead. But then we know better, you know what I'm saying? Because we have 3 adults. And we got one 12-year-old. So we contact each other like, so babe, did you say this and this or that? Or did you tell them that they could or couldn't? And so we know how to defend ourselves really well against the attacks of our children.
Yeah, and so even with that, when he's talking about the laying on the chest and things like that, that's infancy. So even at that, moment is that you still need to build that bond and still have that boundaries, okay? So don't forget, so when babies start doing certain things like the biting, maybe the pinching, or sometimes it's been like where the baby might bump your heads. Oh my goodness, we've had that before, and it's like, oh man, like now I got a headache because you just bumped my head. But that's because either listen to music, some people go to church, and so the kids are used to bopping their head, or just music in general, so they used to like bobbing their head like, oh, hey. So sometimes that may happen. But you have to tell them like yes or no. You have to let them know when it's time to do it and when it's not time to do it. But you have to start with those boundaries even as a very, very young age, at a very young stage.
Yeah, but the whole thing about it is that realistically, like, you got to be careful with the way that you set bonds and boundaries, because when your children get older, if you don't establish those boundaries early on in their childhood, it can take a kind of ugly turn, because you want to be more of a friend to them when they get older. And there's a very, very fine line between being friendly and being a friend, but still having that parental role that you have to play, that disciplinarian role that you have to play. Because when you get too friendly with your kids, they feel like they can talk to you any kind of way, or they can do whatever they want to. They tend to get more rebellious. And not all the time, though. There are some children that if you give them the space, and this is one of the ways that we try to like approach the situation with our children, just give them space to make the right or the wrong decision, preferably the right decision, and sit back and be able to basically coach them in the right direction after they have found out that they either did it right. You make sure that you pat them on the back, or figuratively speaking, or sometimes literally speaking, and make sure that you coach them in the right way, coach them up. So what happens is when they make the wrong decision, you approach it like a coach, like, okay, what did you do wrong there? What could you have done differently in order to make sure that did not happen? And what will you do differently in the future to make sure that doesn't happen?
Right. And matter of fact, we just had this conversation with a couple of our kids. It's like the difference between how our youngest son does schooling versus how the older ones. Like the older ones, we didn't really have to like manage them. We didn't have to hover over them. They knew that we would check grades like once or twice a week. They were honor roll students all the way up until like high school. Then it was like A and B honor roll. Then it was like here and there. But that comes from, now you got friends, you're in a bigger place as far as being in the high school. But they learned on their own. Like, okay, if I'm slacking and doing my homework, just because my parents are not hovering over me as much or still doing the same thing, because we never really changed unless there was something going on in their grades. So we kept the same way we did as far as checking their grades. It's just that I guess they had gotten used to it, or they was just like, I don't know what
puberty,
it was.
Folks. It's called puberty.
But yeah, so we got, so then it was like they knew the effects of it. So it was like, okay, so you got to see in this class. Why? And then it was like, like y'all asking me all these questions. Like, I don't know. I missed a homework assignment, blah, 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 and this and that. It's like, well, these are the most important times because you're going to college. Mm-hmm. So, all these different things, when you just set in certain things, as my husband said, some things you don't need to tell them. They can find out on their own, but still be there to be their parents.
Yes.
And still had that bond where they still had the understanding. And it was discipline, At this point, at that point, it was like, I'm taking phones away from you. You're not watching TV. You need to stay focused. Make sure that you're doing your assignments. And we would get in touch with the teacher. We noticed that their grades is blah, 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 and this and that. We recognize that. Just letting you know this is what we got for them, if there's any extra credit. So those type of things, if, like my husband said, if you don't set that stuff in place at an early stage, especially in that toddler stage, because them toddlers, they get to going and doing all kinds of stuff, and they started talking, and the favorite words be like no and mine, and it's like no. That stuff you might think is cute, or when they throwing stuff, or when they smack you or anything like that, or smack another adult, is that you had to set that stuff like, no, I can still love you. Wait a minute, like the super nanny. She put him in that little naughty chair, and it's like, no, you're gonna sit in this little chair, and if I gotta keep putting you in there, is that I'm gonna keep putting you over there in your little space. And so setting those type of things, like to discipline, how to discipline the kids. What are we gonna still like discipline them, but still like what are we gonna put in place of just different things? Like how are we gonna go from here? What can we do differently? What could you have done differently? So those different things come into play when you still building those bonds and boundaries with your kids. And like my husband said, when they get to that teenage stage, it may be too late. You know, some kids you might be able to give like a little leeway. And
but you kind of
some kids
you could have put your best foot forward in their younger years, and as soon as they hit puberty, you got another thing coming. It's really and not to say that all kids are this way, but you have to be a little more delicate with some, and then you have to be more stern and firm with others. But really, I hate to say it's like playing a game of chess, but really it is. You have to be strategic with the moves that you make, because you want to be able to have your child talk to you and feel that they can come to you about anything. But you also want to make sure that you're not giving so much leeway where it's, you know, I give you a yard or give you a foot and you take a yard, or an inch and you take a mile. And like, we all want to have a good bond with our children. You know, we want to make sure that they can come and talk to us about anything. And, you know, because of some of the things that we faced as parents, and this is some really rough stuff sometimes, like you don't understand the importance of making sure that your bonds are firm and that your boundaries are firm. But having such a delicacy to it, it's almost like surgery. Because you have to be very, very careful. You go too far this way, you can kill the relationship. You go too far this way, you give, you know, a smothering effect to the relationship. So, like, honestly, like, because of the stuff that we faced with some of our children, you know, it's like we wish that the learning process or the learning curve for us would have hit a lot earlier. Because the way that we found out certain things was through like other people hearing or talking to our child, which was a family member, talking to our child about certain situations, because they felt at that point that they did not know necessarily how to come to us about it. So it's a very touchy subject. And sometimes, you know, we as parents, you know, we like, hey, give me your phone. We about to check up on you, see what you're talking about. That's a good thing. That's letting them know, even though they really don't like it. And they're like, oh, why you got to invade my privacy? Because it's letting you know that regardless of the fact that you don't like it, I love you and I care for you enough to make sure that you're being safe.
Yeah. And those things need to be set ahead of time. So as soon as you thinking, okay, I'm going to give my kid a phone, whether they 8, 10, 13, 14 or whatever, before you even give them that phone, before you even go buy the phone, okay?
Before you start looking for phones.
Yeah, before you even go do all of that and the kid is mentioning, oh, I want a phone, I want this, can I get a phone, or whatever, you decide to get that phone, then is the time when you're having that conversation about what the boundaries and what you're going to be doing. So we did that with our kids. We let them know, like, we will do phone checks, like surprise phone checks, because, you know, kids do all these special apps and stuff now that's supposed to look like calculators, but then it's really something else. Just all these different apps and just different things that they're on, social medias and things like that. And so that's another thing. When is a good age for them to get on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, like all those different things? Like what is a good age? Sit down and have this conversation with them. Don't wait until they start opening up one and then you like, why did you open up this? You weren't supposed to open it up when y'all ain't never really had a conversation. So you need to have that conversation ahead of time. Check and see what your kids are into. Like, even when it came to their friends and they like, oh, can I go over Coco's house? Who is Coco? Who is Coco's parents? Okay.
Does Coco have a brother?
Right.
Like, especially when it comes to, like, for me as a dad and my daughters, it's like, wait a minute, are there going to be boys over there? Or do you want to spend the night with who? Like, how many, you know what I'm saying? Like, what are their parents like? We need to talk to these people. We need to see them face to face. I need them to see my face and let them know that this will be the face that they see if anything happens to my baby.
Right.
Like, hey, you want to hear the bass come out?
Yeah, it wasn't like, nah, don't be trying to trick me up and try to do phone calls, because that can be one of your friend or your friend that you trying to go over and kick it with or go to the mall, whatever you're trying to do. Like, no, we want to know who the parent is. And if they are even coming to the house and picking them up, is that I'm about to go to the car, I want to meet you and find out what's going on, what is the situation going on, and where you taking them when they coming back. Like,
we need to know what your values like.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not about to just let our kids go anywhere, and that's just because we love our kids. We love our kids, and you know,
and safety. It's about safety as well.
Like, even if we didn't want to walk all the way to the end of the street to drop them off at the bus stop, we would stand in front of our house and watch them walk all the way down there. If anything looked different, we'd be like, hey, you all right? You know what I'm saying? If they don't give us a thumbs up or say, yeah, we're okay, then we're on our way down there ASAP. And, you know, it really is like, like my son, he's like, Dad, like last couple years before COVID hit, he's like, you gonna walk me to the bus stop? I'm like, for what? Like, you big enough to walk there, but Dad, I like it when you walk. So you know what? I'll walk down there with him. That's a bonding moment. Mm-hmm. These are the times in which you take and go ahead and bond with your child, because it's like you don't really understand how many more in the moments you might have, because once they start growing up and they like, I don't want to give you no hug and no kiss on the cheek. Like, I'm too big for that. I'm too grown for that. Yeah. Now I walk to the bus stop myself, like, or then they start driving and it's like, oh, can I go so-and-so? And then you looking like, my wife though, she's like, my babies are growing up, especially the girls though.
Yeah.
And it's like,
they want to hang out with mom as much.
They want to go out on their own or with their cousins.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like, I was feeling kind of sad, like, oh man, they really growing up. They got friends and stuff now. I'm like, oh, so you don't want to go to the store? Now I gotta almost bribe you, like, I'll buy you something to eat when, you know, like when I go and pick up me something to eat, I get you something to eat. They be like, oh, okay. Or sometimes they be like, nah, mom, I already ate. So it's those different things, and it was like having that bond and building it at such a young age. And then we even had a day where I called it Cherish Day, like cherish the moment. No phones. We put the phones up, or either left them in the car or put them in our purse, but it was not on the table where we had Cherish Day. So we did that once a month where we went out to eat, and that was me and my daughters. And then I had custody of one of my cousins. So we all went out. That was our day, our Cherish Day. And we all look forward to it like, oh my gosh, because we want to cherish the moments that we have in the little time that we have left on this earth, or however much time that we have. But as they get older, because at a certain point, we no longer as parents or their influencer, it's everybody else around them. Is the celebrities,
the group of friends that they're with, the new friends that they'll meet, or the people that hang around their friends, which is the, you know, and that's where you gotta pray basically that you did your job as a parent, and that you instilled the right set of morals in your kids to be like, nah, I don't think I want to go that way, or nah, you know, you're not the type of people that I want to hang out with, or you know what, you're the perfect person. Because the thing is, you know, like I knew growing up, and I'm sorry that I laugh like that, but I knew growing up that the people that I wasn't supposed to be around was most of the people that I was around. And in retrospect, as a parent, it's like, I know when I don't want my kids around a certain element, and it's like, but what did you do? You know, and the thing is, not all your kids is going to fall in line with the things that you set for them, or the way that you feel or think that they should go. Like, honestly, it's it's a rough time as a parent when they start hitting adulthood, because it's like you can't just sit them down and discipline them and tell them no, because they can leave and they can go on about their life, and they don't have to ever really talk to you again. And you know, that as a parent is the most hurtful thing for one of your children to not want to be in your life or to have you in their life. And honestly, like I have my moments where, you know, I was out there and I left where we lived at for a couple years at a time, and I didn't talk to anybody for 6 months to a year at a time. And it's like, I get it. I understand. I was young, I was dumb, but the whole thing about it was the morals and the beliefs that was set in me. Because I'm a preacher's kid, I was like, yeah, you know what they say about preacher's kids, yeah, y'all the worst. Well, I was pretty daggone bad, but the morals and the stuff that was taught to me when I was young, the things that I seen, and it wasn't just my mom, it was my dad also. My dad would pray with me, and we would pray as a family, and those are the morals and the values that we have as a family today. Because our kids, before they go to bed, they'd be like, hey, let's go ahead and pray. They'd be like, oh. But see, the thing is, what's going to happen is, later on down the road, they're going to remember those times. When we are long and gone, they're going to remember those times in which we prayed. Because I can remember when I was a little kid in Springfield, Ohio, in the living room, and we was all on our knees. I'm up there looking around because I'm young, and I never really grasped the concept of it until I got older. But they say a family that prays together stays together. Well, I believe parents that pray and teach their kids the right set of morals and values will have that extended through their children when they get older. Because it's like, you know, I mean, at the times in which I was out there, I was like, I didn't care nothing about praying or any of that. But when I was in my darkest hours, because of the bonds that I had with my father and the bonds that I've had with my mom, and the fact that I know that they were praying parents, is that I knew what to do. I knew what to do. And ultimately, it brought me back home. So, you know, my wife, on the other hand, she is, man, I mean, like, it was so hard to separate her mama. Like, I mean, like, there was a spoon coons.
It was like this, like, that was my best friend, but that was a bond that we had, like, over time. And so, especially with me being, well, I have a twin brother, so, but he was first, so that means that he's older than me. But having an older brother, then I was a girl for a very long time. So, with my mom, it just being her being the other female, of course, that I'm gonna be more attached to her. So it was like she was molding me and things like that. So we built that bond. I mean, just different things, playing family games. Like, we talk about that, like we do that now with our own children, even with them being, you know, adults, and then we got the preteen. But having those different memories of taking from our childhood of what we can do and implement to keep those bonds and boundaries within the family between a parent and a child. And then even, let me piggyback what my husband was saying, like, even when you have raised your child or your children to do the right thing, they may scurry over and do something else. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. It doesn't mean that you didn't set the right morals for them. If you know within your heart, and you know without a doubt that you had parent them and been a parent to them the best way possible, then don't have no regrets. You keep it moving, you pray for them, or you just keep, you know, hoping and wishing that, you know, things to get better with them, things to get better with you and that child, to maybe build a bond. But don't sit and, because we've been there, done that, but don't sit and feel like, oh, reevaluating yourself, and then they out there doing whatever that they want to do when you at home and you crying because you thinking like, I did something as a parent. No, if you feel like I did the best thing that I did and they decide they want to do something else totally different, hey, it's okay. Cry, let it go, and then that's it. But also with that, because I know some kids, they will be rebellious and they will try to go a different way, whether they're, especially during the teenage years, is that always have a mentor. Get a mentor for your child. Meet the person. Make sure they are the right candidate for your child, because you still might have one that's out there that's not a good one, that may not discipline them or check them. Be like, no, you wrong. You shouldn't have said that to your mom, or you shouldn't have did this, you shouldn't have did that. Not try to sugarcoat stuff, but get mentors. Like, our children had mentors.
Yes.
We met them, whether it was through the church or whether it was through their school or
community, non-profit organizations.
Yes. So we made sure we kept in touch with these people. We was all on the same accord, on the same level and everything. So whether it was homework or they did something as far as not being, doing something that was out of character or whatever it was, and it was a discipline thing. So guess what? Whether you decide, oh, okay, I want to go over such and such house because I just need some time away. And that's another thing we're going to talk about too. So it was like, okay, when you go there was no TV here, there was no phone there. So when you go over such and such house, guess what? We on the same page. You have no TV and no phone over there. So if you feel like that's where you want to go for, a day or two or overnight, that's fine. So that was something that we set for our kids, is to have that, that connection with their mentors, but making sure that they're actually doing the same thing that we're doing, that you're not just going over there and just partying it up.
They have to, if we set something up at home, it has to be continued wherever that they go to. Mm-hmm. And, you definitely don't, like my wife said, you don't want somebody that's just going to agree with them, because we've had that too. Mm-hmm. And we had to completely rearrange and reevaluate the way that we look at mentors, because of a couple people that was like, oh, just give them what they want. And I'm like, excuse me? Okay, you're off the list. So, it's like, it's crazy, because like my wife said she was best friends with her mom. Like, I was best friends with my dad, but I didn't realize it until I was like about to be 30, like late 20s, early 30s, like, and it's like, at that point it wasn't too late, but it was almost too late, because my dad passed shortly thereafter. And, you don't want to miss time, because you might have regrets, and you don't want to live your life with regrets. So build the bonds, and keep them, even though you might have to restructure them in the way that you approach them later on down the road. So with that said, we'll be right back right after this message.
It's time to come home from wherever you are and wherever you've been. There is nothing like an open door, a welcoming sign, and a familiar face. Where hope wipes away tears, love fills the heart, and laughter heals a soul like medicine. It's time to rest. From our PGN family to yours, welcome home.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. So our topic today is on bonds and boundaries with your children and with your spouse or significant other. So we didn't necessarily touch base or touch too much information on the relationship part with like your spouse or your significant other. But it's almost like simple stuff, like, making sure you do have those boundaries, things that you don't want to do in a relationship, what you feel comfortable doing in a relationship, just making sure that you have those boundaries and still keeping that bond. And so as we even talked about in other episodes that we've done, is how to build those different bonds. So we're talking about the intimacy part, The sexual part, communication, trust, honesty, all those different things builds the bond, and being vulnerable. But also with the boundaries is don't be afraid to talk about the stuff that the do's and the don'ts.
Right.
You know, like I'm not ready for that.
What you will do and what you won't do. I mean, and we're not just talking about sex. We're talking about just emotionally and just the things like, okay, like if you don't eat sushi, hey, I'm not eating sushi. So, you know, it's setting up basically what a bond is, or an emotional attachment. Attachment means that two things are tied together. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to bonds, you're not necessarily having to have a romantic bond or a sexual bond. Like you can really bond with somebody and care for somebody and love somebody without having those type of influencers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when it comes to the relationship side of bonds and boundaries, you want to make sure, like, because it's also a fine line there too. Like there's certain things that she likes that I don't like, and there's certain things that I like that she don't like.
Yeah, don't push me to do it. Like I'm afraid of heights. Don't push me to do certain things. This ain't just too high up.
This ain't, well, okay, too high up could be 10 feet in the air, a little bridge at the park going over
a little jungle jump. Water. It don't matter. Any of those things.
It ain't even got to be 10 feet. If it's 6.5 feet or better, so what I do, because, you know, I like to push boundaries every once in a while. When we're on that bridge, I'll jump up and down and try to make it shake. She'll be like, stop it. Better stop it.
But boundaries can be set in relationships, and it should be set
and respected.
Yes, immediately in the beginning of the relationship. Okay, and that's the same way with your children. Is that the bonds and boundaries? The bond that starts in the womb and that's with the mama and the daddy. Like I said, it's different for the woman because she's more, you know, she's carrying the baby. So more emotions there because she's carrying the baby. So the more attachment, but also the daddy can also have that bond immediately.
Yes.
While the baby's still in there, the talking, you know, the rubbing of the belly, as we talked about before, those different things so that the baby can get used to hearing different noises, the vibrations, and so he'll recognize that, or she will recognize that. The baby will recognize that in the womb when they come out.
I believe they can recognize your energy too. Mm-hmm. So with that, you got to be careful with your bounds, your bonds and boundaries with your spouse or your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other. You know, because the way that you treat them, the way that the boundaries are set between you and your spouse, will convey and convert over into your children, because not only do they see, hear, and feel your energy, they materialize it in their brain as this is how it's supposed to go. So if you're mistreating each other verbally, emotionally, physically, they think that this is a part of how a relationship is supposed to be. And it affects not just their relationship with who they may fall in love with later on down the road, but it affects every relationship between. If you wonder why your kids are acting up at school, check your house. If you wonder why your kids are getting into fights in the neighborhood, check your house. Check the house of the kids they playing with. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying like go into their house and go, but from the outside looking in, you can tell if something ain't right. So you have to be very careful about the atmospheres that you're setting for your children and the ones that you allow your children to get into.
Yeah, so as a toddler stage, you want to start doing that. If some people pop the baby's hands, some of them do the no. Some people may do the super nanny, like put them in the naughty chair.
Some people try to make a deal with a toddler.
Yeah,
it's not happening.
Yeah, then you're trying to get a hold of them, to discipline them once they become like preteens and teenagers, and they popping up out the mouth, or just like, no, I'm not going to do it, or just walking, yelling, screaming, Then you in the store, you embarrassed. You in public, you embarrassed because your child disrespecting you. But this is what they do all the time. Like, no, you need to snip that in the bud when they are toddlers. By the time they are preteens, you already know.
It ain't funny, but I'm trying to tell you, when you in the store and you see that happening, it's extremely entertaining.
No,
I'm just
hey,
saying.
not to me, because I'm like, no. There's been times inside of the store
Hey,
when I'm
she'll
like,
check somebody else, kid.
Yes, I will. I have done that before. Toddlers, they flipping out on the floor or in the cart, and they just on, and the mom is just like trying her best. And it's been times when I'm like, I give them the eye, or I'd be like this, right behind the mama.
She'll
like,
get, if the mom turns her head, she'll get close and you better straighten up.
I've done that even with the parents standing there, and I'm like, did your mommy just tell you don't do that? And some of the parents, like I have not yet had one that look at me crazy or say anything to me.
That's true.
But it's been, most of the time they like, I've had them say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Because then they child looking at me, I'm like, oh, I don't care if you're looking at me because I'm not your mom. I don't have to go home with you, but you don't need to act like that with your mom. But that stuff need to be snipped real quick.
Hey, I'm going to tell y'all, just standing there watching her do that, and then the look on the child's face is hilarious.
I done had little kids, little toddlers roll their eyes at me and everything, and I'm like, I don't care.
Or they go tuck themselves behind their mom's leg.
Yes. And then me and the parent, we having conversation, we just talking, they're like, oh my gosh, I just been having, and it's like, no, okay, it takes a village, okay, I'm part of that village, okay, so we gonna get these kids together as one. And that's another thing too, as parents, is that get around other parents that can help you, okay, that can help pray with you or whatever, like have that as your support team as well, so that when your kids do start acting up, and you can't get in touch with their mentor, you may not be cool with their mentor, but you know who their mentor is, your child's mentor.
You still got somebody that got your back.
You still got their friends that you can be like, girl, or vent to, like, okay, what should I do? You know, I haven't been in this situation or whatever it is, but get other people that has children, okay? It's better off to have somebody that have children because they have experienced certain things with kids at a certain age, and they'll be able to tell you. If people don't have kids, sometimes it's hard for them to understand. They can give you advice. That's like people that haven't been married, but they want to give you marital advice. So you can give some advice to a certain degree, but if you have not been married or have children, there's only a certain level and a certain amount of points that you can give. Unless
you are a child caregiver. You know, you might have quite a bit of experience with children.
Yes.
You know, but like 9 times out of 10, I'm not going to go ask one of my single friends for married advice. Like that's, you're single. You've been single for 25 years. Like I'm good on that conversation. So, and realistically, when you have that type of question or conversation, the only person that you should go to is your spouse.
Yeah.
Because in order for you to get off of your chest what you need to get off, but to be able to convey it in a very civilized manner and for you to be able to reciprocate that conversation and that communication, go to the source.
Yeah. So make sure that you're setting all these disciplinary, the do's and don'ts, stuff that you will compromise on, you keep that stuff to yourself. Stuff that you're going to compromise on, you keep that to yourself. Don't tell that child that, okay? Don't tell that child that.
Make sure
they will use it.
Make sure you don't hold the compromises in your relationship, though. You need to make sure that y'all have that conversation all the way out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying in the beginning. Make sure you're having all these things like already talked about. So if you're talking about getting the phone. Oh, and another thing with our kids, because I know some people like, no, I don't go in my kids' room. That's their domain. That's their privacy.
Please.
Look, unless they renting that space out, I'm renting it out to them.
Hey.
As like, that's their apartment. That's their studio.
It don't matter.
Then, I'm like, oh, okay. Then I keep it to you because, you're renting that space. You're renting that room.
At a certain age.
But, yeah, at a certain age when, they may be young adults in between some stuff. But as a minor, okay, a minor in the house.
If you in school, period, you can be 18 and still be in high school. Once you start hitting the college age, give you some leeway because you're becoming an adult. You got to either tie your shoes or fall down on your face because you did.
But checking in their rooms, you let them know. This is stuff that you let them know up front.
Yeah.
Look, I'm gonna do random phone checks. I'm gonna do random room checks. Then people be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't know that they was doing all these different stuff. Because you ain't checked their room. Have you checked their room? I'm not saying going in any diaries or their journals. No, that's their private stuff. But checking beds or dressers or things like that, those things that are open, the closets and stuff, to find out what your kids may be hiding. Then you can sit there and have a conversation. Then you're not thrown off guard. Be like, oh my gosh. Or when another parent call you up or the teacher or something, and they're like, Johnny did this, Johnny did that, and you're like, what?
Better yet,
then you know up front, like, because you don't have this conversation with your child, like, okay, so I noticed that you had some cigarettes in your room. Like, we need to talk about this. What's going on? Where you get the cigarettes from? Why are you smoking?
But be up front with them. I mean, sit them down and talk to them on occasion without even having to do that. And let them know that you're open to talking to them and not going to just bark at them and try to rip their head off because of, you found something.
Yeah.
So you have to still be strategic with your conversation and let them know that, look, this is okay. That this is okay as far as like, we need to talk about this. It's not okay that you have this in our home, or whatever it may be. And very detailed conversation about your boundaries, about what they can and cannot have. Some parents want to be that cool parent.
We're still cool parents. We still cool parents.
We cool, but we ain't bring cigarettes in the house and alcohol and all that stuff cool. Like, we're not cool like that. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that you are checking up on your kids. But don't check up. I mean, when I say check up on your kids, make sure that you're conversating with them.
Yeah, and it makes it much easier when you already have built that, like, maybe at a toddler stage, like a day that y'all going out to eat or just spending time going somewhere, spending time together. Then it's not so awkward when you coming at them. Then it seems like, oh, you only talk to me, or you come at me and want to talk to me about stuff when I get in trouble or do something that you don't like. And it's like, no. Then when you have that time together, you spend the time together, whether it's every other month or every month, you don't set that like a certain day, like I'm spending a day or spending some hours where it's intentional. And
or even like a family game night.
Yeah,
that's a great place to start conversation.
So you can have those different things where it's not an uncomfortable thing to approach your child or your child to approach you. So we love you all so much. Hopefully this information has been helpful for you. Bonds and boundaries with your children or with your child, and also just within the relationship. But we felt like this was so important to talk about because a lot of parents don't know how to set it, or don't never feel like it's too late to set bonds with your child, because it's not.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not too late, even if they're adults and they whatever and this and that. It's not too late.
Still build bonds, so.
But it still takes two people
yes.
to build it. The process takes two people. So sometimes you might have to just lay back as the parent, still love them from a distance. As one of my aunties said, I'm just gonna love them from a distance, and you can still do that. Let them know that you're still there for them. Your arms are open wide, and when they're ready to accept you, your love and everything that comes with it, your boundaries, then there you go.
They'll be back.
Yes. So
we love and appreciate every last one of y'all for tuning in.
And so until next time, see you later.
Have a good one.